Hey everyone, Jim Branscombe here for the Cinematic Void vlog. Spooky season is come and gone, but you know, it's Cinematic Void. We do this year round. And before some of you ask, hey, is your hair darker? Well, yes, I dyed my hair black for my Halloween costume this year. I was Severin, Bill Paxton's character from Near Dark. It was a huge hit at all the Halloween parties I went to, but now I have black hair for the next several months. And also, before some of you point out, yes, I'm very aware none of the vampires in Near Dark have fangs, but it's Halloween, you kind of have to oversell a little bit. And while my cinephile friends knew exactly who I was, at a couple of parties I had people were like, hey, are you James Dean, post-car accident, or just biker dude that got in a fight? There's a couple of people that ran on the street who thought I needed medical attention, and all I did was just put a bunch of fake blood in my mouth and spit it out like that, and voila, vampire fangs, leather jacket, Halloween costume. But anyway, Halloween is now done for 2024, but as I said, this is Cinematic Void. We do genre stuff all year round, which is why today's vlog is kind of tied into the screening series I'm doing at the Los Feliz 3, which is my Monday residency I do through the American Cinematheque. And I'm doing a series called the Art House of Horrors, which, basically it's just horror movies that have a art house bent. I'm showing Diabolique, the original The Haunting, Repulsion, and also Kira Neko. I really love this series. It's actually one of my favorite series I've done in a while. Every so often as a film programmer, you put something together and just like, wow, I can't wait to sit in a theater and watch all these movies. And this is one of those series. But it also got me thinking about things. And as someone that shows movies in a movie theater and talks about movies on YouTube and TikTok and all that stuff, I just kind of want to talk about this weird divide that I have to deal with, getting audiences to screenings and just in the zeitgeist and out in the greater world, which is this weird division between people that like art house movies and horror movies, or specifically grindhouse movies. And I think it's kind of weird because as a cinephile, I would think that you would want to embrace all the genres of movies. It's like, yeah, I show a lot of horror movies, but, I also show a lot of art house movies. I show a lot of action movies. I show all kinds of stuff that kind of fall under a cult cinema banner. And I've been expanding that umbrella because, I show a movie a week, and I wouldn't exist if I just focused on one specific genre or one specific type of movie. One, I don't think I would have an audience, and two, it would just get boring for me. And while I'm going to be critical on both sides of the discussion, I feel like it's something that should be talked about because, going back to when I was getting the movies back in the 90s, I feel like that divide wasn't really as big or really even there, because when I was getting into genre stuff and cult movies, a lot of the movies that are now beloved and things that are considered art house classics were kind of mixed in with all the genre stuff. Case in point, in the 90s, when I was buying bootlegs of Cannibal Holocaust or Lucio Fulci's Beyond, I was also getting things like Salo and different art house things that weren't widely available on DVD or VHS back then. And even as we moved out of the bootleg era and things started getting legitimate releases, I think of a movie like Possession, which is a movie that a lot of the art house crowd really love. It's, you screen it, it's kind of a slam dunk sellout or a big crowd depending on the size of your theater. I first saw Possession on a flipper DVD put out by Anchor Bay that also had Mario Bava's Shock. I think the line between art house and grindhouse was really, really thin, especially when a lot of those movies were coming out in the 60s and 70s, because they would play the kind of same theaters. And also, look at the filmmakers, like Tobe Hooper did Texas Chainsaw Massacre. His first film was kind of an artsy film called Eggshells. George Romero, after he made Night of the Living Dead, his next film was a kind of an art house movie called There's Always Vanilla. And I should also mention George Romero's favorite movie is Tales of Hoffman, the Powell and Pressburger kind of Technicolor musical thing. And if you ever seen any of the special features on the Criterion disc for that movie, you know that George and Martin Scorsese used to fight over who could rent that movie from the New York Public Library on 16mm. So obviously a lot of genre filmmakers loved art house movies, or I don't even think they even thought of them as art house movies. They just loved movies. And I mentioned Martin Scorsese, he loves genre movies. Like, 1982, his favorite movie was Vice Squad, directed by Gary Sherman, and he's definitely championed a lot of genre stuff, including The Changeling. And to go a little further, Wes Craven's first movie, Wes Craven directed Nightmare on Elm Street, his first movie, Last House on the Left, is pretty much a remake or homage or ripoff of Ingmar Bergman's The Virgin Spring. And of course I have to mention one of my favorite all-time movies, Carnival of Souls, which director Kirk Harvey has famously said it was inspired by Cocteau and Bergman, two great art house filmmakers. And speaking of Ingmar Bergman, he's directed horror movies or horror adjacent movies, and one of the best ones he did was Hour of the Wolf, which if you've never seen it, definitely check it out. I screened it back in 2022 and had a sold out crowd. However, the crowd I ended up getting was kind of the Criterion Channel like art house crowd. And one thing I want to say is that when art house crowds come to watch, maybe more genre leading movies, they kind of they don't really engage with the movie how the movie should be. In fact, they take this kind of like looking at a painting kind of thing where they just kind of sit on their hands, they stare at the screen, have no reaction, and that's just weird to me because like if you watch Hour of the Wolf, there's jokes in it, there's really terrifying stuff. It's like a nuanced, it's a movie. It's supposed to invoke emotions in it. It's not supposed to just sit there and like watch the screen blankly. That just seems weird. And since I'm on the topic of Ingmar Bergman, I have to mention Roger Corman, the great exploitation filmmaker, distributor in New World Pictures. Corman even distributed Ingmar Bergman movie, and not one of the horror ones. He did Cries and Whispers because Corman, at his heart, loved movies. I've already mentioned the Criterion Collection, Criterion Channel, Janus crowd, and I'm, not trying to be disparaging of it because I think Criterion and Janus do remarkable, wonderful work. Their releases are top-notch. They're a great film distributor. They have lots of film prints in their library of like films in their collection, and I've screened a lot of them, and I had nothing bad to say, but I think sometimes the audience gets in their head that like they only can appreciate and watch a certain movie if it is branded with that Criterion C. And that's just kind of disappointing to me. I mean, obviously there's some great genre filmmakers in the Criterion Collection. You have George Romero, Night of the Living Dead. You have a ton of David Cronenberg films like Videodrome, The Brood, and things like that. And you even have like John Waters, not necessarily a horror movie filmmaker, but like, a midnight movie filmmaker. You have things like Pink Flamingos and Female Trouble in the Criterion Collection, I like to see the crowd that came to Our Wolf just sit blankly as like Divine eats a piece of dog shit off the street. I hate to use a sports metaphor, but it's a little bit about like rooting for your sports team, and I think that's where a lot of the Criterion, or I love Criterion, fuck everything else mentality comes from. But it also comes from the filmmakers, because there's a lot of filmmakers that kind of get pissy, and I've seen it online and I've seen it during Q&As where they talk about their movies not being in the Criterion Collection because another distributor put it out, and that's kind of corny. And it's just like, I get it, Criterion means a lot, and having your film in a collection with people like David Lynch or Akira Kurosawa, I get it, you want to be with the big guns of the art house or the big guns of cinema in general, but like the thing is, like, Criterion does really nice work, puts out nice releases, but they're not the only ones. And in fact, they have a lot of competition, and the competition out there is doing just as good and in some cases better work out there because they're working on different kinds of movies. Vinegar Syndrome or Severin Films or Arrow Films. All those boutique labels do great work on the restorations and the releases, and it's kind of a shame that someone's not going to watch it because it doesn't have the Criterion C on it. In fact, when I occasionally go on Blu-ray DVD boards and I see someone like, this movie should come out through this company, and like, but dog, there's already a fucking really nice Blu-ray 4K release of it by a different label, and you're not gonna buy it because it's not part of the brand that you like. That's just dumb, that is just dumb. It's like, what's more important, the branding or like the coolness factor of a certain company putting out the release, or the actual movie? Like, when I screen movies, regardless of what context I'm showing the movie, the most important thing is the movie on the screen. But the horror-only crowd are just as bad as the Janus Criterion crowd. The fact that like they don't want to watch anything that's out of a narrow vision of a genre, and I think that's kind of disappointing. And I'll be honest, like, I can't rely on the horror crowd for my horror screenings. In fact, this year, most of my horror screenings outside of January Giallo and a few things here and there were not the best attended. And there's a couple reasons for that, because, you know, one, I think a lot of the horror crowd isn't a repertory cinema crowd. They don't go see these kind of movies unless there's like an actor or director or someone famous there. Because then I have to ask the horror crowd, what's more important? Is it the movie, or is it just having swag and knickknacks and tchotchkes from the movie? And at the end of the day, I just kind of wish people that are on the Criterion side and the just horror genre side would just give other movies a chance, you know? Even if you don't like something, just try it. It's like, you know, I feel like your dad telling you to eat your broccoli. And yeah, you might not like the taste, but it could open your palate to other things. It's just like, you know, eating hamburgers and pizza is great, but sometimes, you know, you should treat yourself to a nice meal. And even if it's not something you really like, at least you said you did, and at least you tried something. And the same thing for like the art house crowd. It's like, yeah, you may think you're eating gourmet cinema all the time or a gourmet meal, but you know, occasionally it's okay to have a hamburger. You know, what I'm trying to say is I'm using lots of sports and food metaphors to just tell people, watch more movies. Watch movies that get you out of your comfort zone. And I think that's important because you could find your new favorite movie on accident just by trying something. So that's gonna wrap up this Cinematic Void vlog / rant / critique. I don't know where I'm going with this, but let me know if you enjoy me doing videos like this, and you know, sound off the comments. Tell me some of your favorite art house movies and some of your favorite grindhouse movies. You know, mix them up. Give me a couple of each. And also let me know if you've been more leaning on art house, if you're willing to watch some kind of grindhouse movies, or if you've been more grindhouse leaning, if you're willing to watch some more art house movies. Like I said, once you get down to it, that line is very thin. And you know, I know I'm recording this at the beginning of November, just after Halloween, but that veil is still thin. Until next time, see you in the void and watch more movies.
You gotta be kidding.
What?
This is a dirty movie.